Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about order of operations, which is the mathematical order to complete evaluating expressions problem in. You may also know this as PEMDAS, but we'll get into that in a moment. So whenever you're looking at a mathematical expression, you always want to go in this order, where you start with parentheses, then exponents, then multiplication, division, then addition, subtraction. So I guess we should start by just filling that in. P stands for parentheses. And parentheses may look like a few different things. This is probably the most traditional way of viewing them. They may also look like brackets. And you may also see bars like this, which are called absolute value. We'll get into the details of what that means at a later time. So things to remember, you're always going to start evaluating inside the parentheses. And you no longer need the parentheses when there is only one number left inside. I'll give you an example of that so you know what in the world I'm talking about. So let's say you have the problem 1 plus 2 times 3. First, you would say to yourself, okay, I know I need to start inside the parentheses. Here they are. So I'm going to do 2 times 3 first, and that's 6. The question I get here is, do I still need parentheses or not? And the answer is you do not, because there's only one number left. So you're not grouping anything together. You no longer need them. And you would finish that off by just saying 1 plus 6 is 7. Okay, always start with your parentheses. The next step in our process is exponents. That's the E in PEMDAS, if you're familiar. Exponents. Things to remember. We write exponents as a base to the exponent power. So what that looks like, or a few examples, it could be 2 raised to the third power, which is also known as something else, but I'll get to that in a moment. Labeling some vocab here, the big number is called the base. The little number is then the exponent. And an exponent just means repeated multiplication. I'm going to write that over here, actually. Exponent means repeated multiplication. So 2 to the 3 power, just for a side note, actually means 2 multiplied 3 times. 2 times 2 times 2. So the exponent tells you how many times to multiply the base. Okay, for our example, it says blank to the blank power is written as, so let's say it's 4 to the 7th power. You'd write it as 4 is the base, 7 is the little number, the exponent. When we're talking about exceptions, I don't mean exceptions to the rule, I mean exceptions to the vocab. So if you see 3 raised to the 2nd power, we usually don't say 3 raised to the 2nd power. We say that is 3 squared. So the 2 is I guess you could call it a special exponent, is a squared. So you would say that's 3 squared. And 4 raised to the 3rd power, you can definitely say that. It's not wrong, but we would typically say 4 cubed. Think a cube is a 3-dimensional space. So a 3rd exponent is a cube, and a 2nd exponent is a squared or square. So those are the key vocab there. So when you have a problem, you start with parentheses, then you do any exponents. The next step in the process would be multiplication or division. And you'll notice for these last 2 categories, I have a slash. That's because multiplication and division are basically the same thing, but in opposite directions. So multiplying by 2 is the exact same, multiplying by half is the exact same thing as dividing by 2. So when you multiply and divide, they're interchangeable. because they're the same. So you actually always work from left to right. And in terms of symbols, I feel like we typically know that this is multiplication. Here's my colors. There we go. This is multiplication and this is division. But for multiplication, there are other symbols. You may also see a star that looks like this, especially if you're on a computer. You may see a dot. You could also see parentheses for multiplication. So I'm going to write an example of that. Like 2 parentheses 3 means 2 times 3. The reason we do that is the x tends to look like a variable, so we just took it out. Or on the flip side, if you say like 2b, that means 2 times b. We don't use the x for multiplication because it looks like an x, the variable, and that can be confusing. For division, you may also see a slash. You can also see something written as a fraction, like 2 over 3 means 2 divided by 3. Different ways to see multiplication and division. So for some examples, let's say you have 2 parentheses 10, that means 2 times 10, then divided by 4. What order do we work in? Always go from left to right if you have both multiplication and division. So in this case, you're going to multiply first. 2 times 10 is 20. Then you'll divide by 4. 20 divided by 4 is 5. Okay, second example. Well, a lot of people say, hey, I know my PEMDAS. M comes before D. I should do this first, right? And it's actually incorrect. It was remembered incorrectly. When you have multiplication and division, we work from left to right, since they're basically the same thing. So you would do 35 divided by 5 first is 7, then multiply by 2. And 7 times 2 is 14. So this is a super common mistake. I'm going to highlight it, put stars by it, do something. When you multiply and divide, and you have both of those in a problem, move from left to right. And actually adding and subtracting works exactly the same. You also move from left to right. Because addition and subtraction, essentially the same thing. One, you're just going in one direction, getting bigger. One, you're getting smaller, but like they're the same idea. So this was multiply and divide. This was add and subtract. Adding looks like a plus sign. Subtraction looks like this. There's only one little thing I wanted to note here, and that's if you have subtracting a negative. So let me give you an off example, like 4 minus negative 1. 4 minus negative 1 is actually the same thing as 4 plus 1. It's kind of like when you say don't not be on your phone. That double negative, don't not, actually means do be on your phone. So when you subtract a negative, it's the same thing as adding. Another super common mistake, so I'm even going to highlight that, and I recommend you note it on your notes as well. Okay, for some examples, you're going to work that should say left to right. And example 1, you have both addition and subtraction. So the first thing you're going to do on the left is add 2 plus 10 is 12. Then you're going to subtract 3, so 12 minus 3 is 9. Okay, here, again, this is where people make mistakes because we remember PEMDAS and we think A is before S, but no, those two operations are interchangeable, so we just go left to right. 20 minus 5 is 15. Then you add 1 to get 16. That moving left to right often causes people to make mistakes. So instead of saying PEMDAS all the time, if you look to the next page, I actually like this pyramid. Is showing you the chunks in which you go. So you're going to start with parentheses, then exponents. Multiplication, division, same chunk. So they always come before addition and subtraction, but they can work in either order. Okay, last but not least, you always save addition and subtraction for last, but again, they could be in either order. So they're in the same chunk of the pyramid. Now that we have reviewed our order of operations, I want you to try both of these problems in the given space in your practice area and pause the video. I will come back with the answers for you to check, see if you have any questions. No cheating. Okay, if done correctly, this is what you should have got. The highlighted blue is my first step. So in the first problem, I started with parentheses, because parentheses always come first. Second problem, I did not have parentheses or exponents, so I started with multiplication or division, in this case multiplication. Okay, so 7 times 5 is 35. One thing to note is I rewrote the whole problem. I still wrote 2 plus. But then instead of 7 times 5, I substituted in what that is, which is 35. It may seem silly, but the students who write the steps like this and don't like reorder things make fewer mistakes. I see it all the time. In the first problem, 6 plus 7 is 13. Okay. You can leave the parentheses here to mean multiplication because when there's nothing in between, we don't use the X, that means multiplication. Or you could have written it like this. So you did the parentheses first, then you do 3 times whatever was in parentheses. So again, I rewrote that 3 times 6 plus 7, but 6 plus 7 is now 13, and you get 39. Want a couple more challenging ones? I'll give you 2 more. Here are 2 more problems for you to try. Try it on your own. Then when I come back with the answer, you can check your work and see how you did. No cheating, no peeking. Okay, take a look at my work and see if you got the same things. Highlighted my first steps in blue. So in the first problem, I did 4 times 4 first since that was in parentheses, and I got 16. Again, I cannot stress enough. I rewrote the whole problem in order. I just substituted 16 in for 4 times 4. If you did not show all this work, I highly recommend you write it on your paper now. Students make the least mistakes when they do this. Okay, then this is multiplication since there's nothing in between it. Multiplication has to come before subtraction. So I did 2 times 16 next. 12 minus 32. It's like you have $12 and then you lose $32. So now you're in the negative $20 or in debt, if you will. This one I started with 10 minus 8 and got 2. Then you had another set of parentheses. So if there's multiple parentheses, work inside, out. So go in all the way in the middle and then work your way to the outer parentheses. So then you do parentheses again is 4 minus 2. Okay, so that is why we did the subtraction before the division, is because it was in parentheses. 4 minus 2 is 2. But I still wrote everything like the 20 divided by, 20 divided by, 20 divided by, carried down. I just substituted in the new value. So 4 minus 2 is 2. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So that is your order of operations with just numbers. You can also follow this order of operations when you're evaluating things with variables as well for another time. If you have any questions, don't forget to ask. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.